All right, we are going to talk about assignment 3, the matched master portrait. Your first goal is to find a portrait that you are interested in. We all like portraiture for different reasons at different times. And it can be a photo portrait, or it can be a painted portrait, or even a drawn portrait. It could be commercial, it could be fine art, it could be kind of documentary style. If you really wanted to experiment, you could even pick something that's very abstracted and interpret this photographically. All of that's possible, and that's what makes this third assignment fairly challenging, but also just incredibly enlightening, because it's going to help us see portraiture for the actual techniques that are used. So if I take this portrait of Bill Murray, and this is a type of celebrity portraiture that's gained popularity over the last 10 years or so. And it's just extremely direct. So here we have Brad Pitt. You'll notice that there's not a whole lot of difference between these two portraits, because all of the formal decisions of the photograph are the same. And what that means is that the focus is always the exact same place, right on the eyes. Notice that the noses are out of focus and everything behind the eyes is out of focus. The nose is out of focus, everything behind the eyes is out of focus. You can see that very clearly on the back of their shirts and on their ears and their hairline. That gets rid of all the frizzes. Right. Here's Christopher Walken, shot the same way. But what makes these all very identifiable as being shot in the same way, John McEnroe, is the light that's used. So this is using what's called a ring flash that wraps around the lens of the camera, and you can see it in their eyes. It's designed so that you can still see the blacks of their pupils, so it doesn't reflect against the lens of their eye as much, and it kind of curves around their eye. But it gives them this very strong, diffused light, because it's a soft flash right in the middle of the face, and so it darkens as it goes around. So it makes their heads just look enormous, like they're big sculptures lit in a room. And it makes them very direct. Before that, the big trend was for side lighting, dramatic side lighting. And that's just a different direction of light. And so paying attention to the direction of the light is going to be an important part of this project. Kind of the Sears portrait style is to have a gradated background and then an angled light that counters that gradated background. But you also might have fun looking at paintings. And there's a much longer history of portraiture and painting than there has ever been in photography. And you can see some of the decisions made there, where the light is hitting, where the shadows are, where the focus is, and where do edges get blurred out. So it's whatever draws you to it. You can have these kind of Baroque effects of the light emerging from the darkness. Okay, some examples I've collected that I really like are here. And these largely come from college students, art school students, and mostly this exercise is popular when the students are studying for stage lighting. So this is an incredibly technical exercise, an assignment for matching lighting, for the direction of lighting. Because that's what set designers and theater technicians have to really master. Like, where is the light coming from? How is it filling the space? Now, to really match the photo or the portrait, you also have to match the formatting. So how rectangular or how square is it? And then, how does the figure fit within that composition? And we call this the positive space and the negative space, or the foreground and the background. And you see here with this Wayne Thiebaud painting, because it's on a white background, you can see really clearly the shape that's made from her form taking up this rectangle. And to try to match that photographically, you just do the exact same thing. Right? You really line up where their eyes are, how much space is from each edge, and we're going to do that with a format sketch. So on and on. Almost anything can be replicated through photography if you're developing the formal elements and looking at them carefully. And we can get really beautiful examples. So how do we go about doing this? So before we ever take a shot, we have to really understand the formal qualities. And to do that, we first find our exemplar. So this is mine. I'm going to open it up in preview and then shrink it down so I can always look at it. Right? And actually what you might want to do is also open it up with Photoshop. Close these other ones. All right. Now the reason opening it up in Photoshop has some advantages over opening it just in preview, though I will keep it open over here off to the side in case I need it, is we're going to do some sketches based on it. And those sketches are going to help us when we take our exposures, help us understand what things we have to match right from the very beginning. And if I go to the crop tool, the first thing that is helpful are these formatting lines, what are called the rule of thirds lines. So even though this painting was painted at really the middle of the 19th century, really before photography had a whole lot of impact on the art world. This was painted in Germany by a German romantic painter named Caspar David Friedrich. Just the rules of composition that pre-existed photography and that we now use common to photography suggest that it's a good idea in general to line up focal points with these third lines, and especially where these third lines intersect. And he in some ways uses that, and in some ways he breaks away from it. His dominant focal point is not on a third line, it's dead center, right? But he uses the third lines to kind of frame in his figure so that the figure feels very small within this expansive background. So, what I'm going to do is use that as a reference, and then, just like you will, I'm going to sketch. So I'll say File, New, and I'm going to sketch digitally, but you'll do this in your sketchbook. So pretend this is a sketchbook page. And we're going to do 3 types of sketches to really make sure we understand the formal elements of the portrait we are trying to match. Yeah, this is just a tablet. Because I teach digital art too, you gotta have the tools. All right, so with my sketch, first, I'm going to do it in kind of a light pencil. All right. First, I'm going to try to draw. This is annoying because I'm trying to see them both at once. In my sketch pad, sketchbook, in just one page, I'm going to try to really match the format. Try to make the rectangle match that of the portrait I'm trying to match. So it's the same width, the same height, the same proportion. And then I'm going to draw third lines. Right, cutting it in thirds from side to side. It can be very sketchy. Being able to draw helps you in all things, but not being able to draw shouldn't limit you from trying. You can make adjustments. So cutting this into thirds. And this is where having it open in Photoshop is helpful, because if you turn the cropping tool on, you can see where your subject matter lines up with the third line. So I have foreground, which is the rocks and the person, and then background, which is everything else. And so now I need to sketch that. So he fits in right here. There's not much person in my portrait, but it can still be a good exercise for matching lighting, format, composition. And then the rocks go right up to here and then come down, and they don't quite go to the bottom edge. They cut off. Then on the other side, same thing. They square off. And then these are like wings pointing to him. And that's basically the composition, foreground, background. And that's all you have to do. And then you might really heavily outline your foreground and your background. So you know that positive shape and that negative shape you really want to cut out, if possible, with your exposures. Not that the shapes need to match, but their placement within the frame matches. Now there's another thing you want to do, and that is open something recent. And you want to see what the native format of your camera is. So for instance, this texture exposure, let me rotate it to be vertical. And if I crop this, I see that the native format of my camera does not match the painting. Actually, mine's pretty darn close, but yours might not be. So, what can you do about that? I want you in your format sketch to make a dotted line for what you want your camera's framing to be of the scene. And it's always a good idea to capture a little bit more in your exposure so that then you are able to crop down to match the formatting exactly. Does that make sense? Now your camera might be more square or longer, and then you just have to account for that when you frame up your shot. All right. And different cameras have different, what are called aspect ratios. Okay, the next challenge is the lighting. And we're going to do a lighting sketch. And we start the lighting sketch by redrawing the format sketch. And that's just to really cement for you how important that is. But I'll be a little bit faster about it by just copying and pasting this. But I want you to redraw it. Doesn't need to be pretty. Now the lighting sketch, you want to leave plenty of room around it. That is where you determine where the light sources are and what kind of light conditions you need. Now mine is a tough one, and you can look back at previous video tutorials about more like studio portraits and things. But this is set outdoors. And so this lighting condition is very diffused. If I look at the rocks and I squint, I can tell where the highlights are. So first I'm going to look at the foreground. And I'm going to erase all this out so that I can make it, through shading,